Vanya had never quite hit his stride in life. From their youngest days, Marina had lived a stone's throw away from Vanya. He had dutifully lugged her school bag back and forth through their school years, without uttering a word. Marina, twinkling with mischief, would tease him, "Vanya, cat got your tongue." Snuffling, he'd mutter, "What's there to talk about?" With a hearty chuckle, Marina would respond, "Better you stay quiet. Yes, that suits you best." And quiet he remained. His silence grew only more pronounced as Marina blossomed, flaunting her newfound charm. Vanya's mother, ever concerned, would often exhale a weary sigh. "Why not find a nice girl for yourself, my boy?" That Marina and her whole clan, they're flighty. No good for you. But Vanya simply sniffed and kept on tagging along with Marina. She headed to the club, while he impatiently waited for her on the street. She mingled with a guy, and he trailed them closely. Marina even resorted to throwing punches at him more than once. "Hey, just leave me be. I'm exhausted. You're shadowing me wherever I go, scaring away potential suitors," Marina exclaimed, exasperated. Vanya did not lift his gaze, calmly remarking, "Those guys are trouble. They're no good for you." "Oh, really? And who do you think is a decent guy? You're nothing but a jerk," she retorted in frustration. Vanya was affronted, yet he concealed his wounded pride. Subsequently, fate compelled him to be conscripted into the military. Life within its austere confines proved arduous, necessitating his full engagement to stave off thoughts of Marina. Every available moment, he immersed himself in relentless workouts at the gym. This regimen sculpted Vanya into an exceedingly attractive specimen, akin to a figure gracing the pages of a glossy magazine. Numerous girls noticed him, refusing to be overlooked, but his heart yearned solely for a glimpse of Marinka. And Marinka, in turn, experienced a surge of elation. An inkling had taken root within her, suggesting she may be with child. Uncertain, but still, the possibility remained. A fortnight prior, during a perilous phase in her reproductive cycle, she had neglected contraception. That was when Vanya came in handy. In a mere moment, he succumbed to temptation, especially since he now possessed the aura of a veritable man. Another tryst unfolded, and 1 month later, Marika apprised him of her lateness. As for Vanya, jubilation coursed through his veins. He found it difficult to fathom the enormity of his newfound bliss. Yet, amidst the euphoria, his mother unleashed an outpouring of screams and tears. "This child," she exclaimed vehemently, "is not yours. Mark my words, it is not yours. Do not sacrifice your life, do not tether yourself to her in matrimony." Since childhood, Ivan had always been known for his extraordinary tenacity, so his mother reluctantly accepted the situation and began to make preparations for the wedding. Marinka gave birth to a beautiful little girl, delicate and enchanting. Ivan lovingly cradled her in his arms, washed diapers, and cooked porridge for her. Marinka, on the other hand, was exhausted beyond measure and desperately needed some rest. She was undeniably weary. Consequently, one night, just as Ivan looked after Sonia, Marinka sought the help of a neighbor to watch over her while she ventured off to bars and restaurants. In the mornings, she would hurriedly return, seeking solace in sleep. For she knew she had no strength left in her to care for her daughter. Ivan understood the situation completely, but chose to remain silent. He feared that Marinka, if provoked, would snatch their daughter away, a sight he could not bear to witness. However, after some time, Marinka seemed to find some semblance of peace. Her restlessness faded, as did Ivan's anxiety. He tried to assure his mother that everything was improving, but she could only shake her head in disbelief. Ivan's mother, inexplicably, grew deeply attached to little Sonitka. Despite her reservations, she couldn't help but adore such an angelic creature. Whenever Ivan was away at night, the old woman would try to take the child under her wing, but Marinka, unwilling to part with her granddaughter, always kept a watchful eye. The old woman pondered on the matter and arrived at a simple conclusion. It is not the one who merely brings a child into the world that can be considered a true parent, but rather the one who nurtures and raises them. Thus she made up her mind and found solace in devoting all her love to Sonechka. One evening, Vanya returned home from a long day at work. There sat Marinka, a suitcase at her feet. Ivan's heart wrenched as his eyes met hers, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, Vanechka, please forgive me," she pleaded. "You know I may never have truly loved you, but now I do. I love you so deeply that my chest feels like it's on fire. But I'm leaving. I'm going to him. He's waiting for me. I have to take Sonechka with me." Vanya stared at her for what felt like an eternity, lost in thought. Then with surprising calm, he spoke. "I'm not letting you take Sonia. There's no reason to drag her into disreputable places. I can handle it alone." Marinka jumped to her feet, startled. "What do you mean you won't let me take her? Sonia's my daughter. I can't live without her." Vanya slammed his fist on the table with such force that one of its legs snapped. "If you want to run off, then go ahead. But there's no way I'm letting you take my daughter to those sordid places." Marinka was terrified. This behavior was so out of character for her husband, yet she attempted once more. Vanya shot her a glance that sent her bolting out the door and into a cab without even a fleeting look back. He lingered for a moment, then rose and made his way to his mother's place. The instant he stepped inside, Sonechka leaped into his arms, exclaiming, "Daddy's here." His mother instantly sensed that something was amiss. "Where's Marinka?" she asked, a hint of worry in her voice. "Sonechka, sweetheart, go gather your toys and put them in your backpack. We'll head home shortly," he instructed. The little girl dashed off, leaving Vanya to face his mother. "She's gone," he stated, his tone flat. "Gone? Where did she go, and why? Vanya, seriously, what kind of person are you? I shouldn't have to drag every single detail out of you. I have no idea where she's gone. All I know is that she left with her boyfriend." The mother, observing her surroundings, decided to take a seat. "How's your boyfriend doing?" she inquired, expressing surprise at her daughter's calm demeanor. "And you speak of it so nonchalantly." "What about Sonechka?" she probed further. "And I didn't abandon Sonechka," her daughter responded, seeking assistance. "Can you lend me a hand?" "Certainly, I'll provide my support," her mother assured, curiosity aroused. "But how do you plan to address this situation?" "Well, she confessed that she never loved me. She claimed to feel a burning sensation in her chest." Her daughter revealed, mixture of sadness and confusion evident in her voice. "I really wish I knew where she's feeling that burning," her mother exclaimed, sharing in her daughter's frustration. Sonechka breezed into the kitchen. "Dad, it's all done." "That's great. Let's head home now. And guess what? Tomorrow's my day off, so we're off to the park and the merry-go-round." "Yippee. What about Mom?" "Mom had to jet off for work, sweetie. She's on a business trip." At first, Sonechka's face fell, but then a spark of mischief lit up her eyes. "Does this mean I get to have Mom's ice cream?" Vanya's mom, having just dried her eyes, chuckled. "Well, aren't you a tricky one, Sonia?" As they were getting ready to head out, his mom touched his arm gently. "Vanya, what's your plan?" "Gonna file for a divorce." "Yep, had enough." "That's fair. Kadish has been asking about you again." "Mom, let's not go over that old tune." "All right, I'll zip it." Vanya placed Sonechka in the car, took his place at the steering wheel, and drove out of the yard. As he made his way, he found himself inexplicably musing about Katya. Katya had been the daughter of a close friend of his mother, a friend who tragically passed away, leaving Katya alone at the tender age of 18. The girl was diminutive, resembling the nondescript gray mouse. Invisibility seemed to be her essence. There are certain individuals who, whether due to a lack of self-assurance or from the force of habit, perpetually remain in the shadows, never raising their voices. Katya exemplified this particular archetype. Even during their childhood, she never partook in the boisterous group games, instead always observing from the periphery. Now Vanya attempted to summon her visage, yet he found himself unable to do so. Naturally, she paled in comparison to Marinka's striking beauty. Eventually, Vanya and Sonia embarked on a shared existence. However, it should be noted that Vanya's mother, Alla Stepanovna, generously extended her assistance to them. Having only recently retired, she found herself with an abundance of spare time on her hands. Initially, Sonia would inquire about her mother, but with time, these inquiries waned. It seemed that Vanya was gradually accepting and adapting to his solitary state. He resigned from his job and embarked on his own modest entrepreneurial endeavor. Curiously enough, his fortunes swiftly changed for the better. People quickly recognized Ivan as an individual of integrity, a man who consistently honored his commitments. Consequently, they eagerly sought out and availed themselves of the services provided by his enterprise. 2 years had elapsed. On a leisurely Sunday afternoon, Vanya and Sonika ventured into the courtyard. The young girl made her way to the swings, while Vanya proceeded to the merry-go-round for some exercise. He failed to promptly notice a woman clutching a child, intently observing him. Yet the moment his eyes fell upon her, he came to a standstill. Right before him, Marinka stood, emaciated, peculiarly dressed, and cradling a little boy in her arms. "Vanya, please forgive me. I implore you not to cast me aside. We can no longer wander aimlessly. Andreyushka here begs for nourishment, and for a month, we have been suffering unnoticed in the alleyways, too ashamed to meet your gaze." In that moment, Sonechka grasped the truth of the situation. "Mommy." The girl didn't fling herself into her father's arms. Instead, she clutched his hand, staring up at him with a look that begged for understanding. The morning light filtered softly through the empty street, yet Vanya could sense prying eyes from nearly every window in the neighborhood. A few of them even cracked open to catch snippets of their conversation. "Let's head inside. No need to give the neighbors a show." "We'll talk there," Vanya suggested. It was only after these words that Sonechka dashed to her mother. Marika's tears flowed freely as she kissed and embraced Sonia fervently. Once inside, Vanya instructed gently, "Feed the child, put her to bed, and then we'll discuss everything." Marina prepared some oatmeal and fed little Andrei, who was all of 6 months old. Vanya silently observed everything. Once Andrei drifted off to sleep, Sonia stayed with him, and Marina went back to the kitchen. She took a seat across from Ivan and sighed. "My man left me high and dry, promised me the moon and stars. But first he drank, then the hitting started, and when Andrei was born, he vanished completely. Just a month ago, he reappeared with a new wife and tossed us out on the street. Vanechka, I understand there's no pardon for me, none at all. Please, don't turn us away. I'll be loyal like a faithful dog. I'll do anything you ask. I have no other place to go. My parents' apartment went to my brother, and you know he won't take us in." Vanya didn't say a word for a long while. Finally, he murmured, "You can stay in the small room for now. We'll figure out the rest later." Time flowed by, almost imperceptibly, until Marinka seamlessly transitioned into the marital bedroom. Life continued much as it had before, though their household had expanded. Little Andriushka matured, affectionately calling Vanya Daddy. Sonichka started her schooling. It had been ages since Ivan's mother had visited. She had harshly branded her son a fool and Marinka a harlot. By the time Sonichka had advanced to second grade, Ivan was rocked by the revelation that Marinka had been unfaithful once more. It struck him like a bolt from the blue. He had indeed observed that Marinka's initial enthusiasm for their children had waned, giving way to irritation and disinterest whenever she had to engage with them. Vanya remained quiet, merely an observer. Then, on several occasions, he returned home while the children were either at kindergarten or school, only to find Marinka absent, although she claimed to have been home all day. With teeth clenched in frustration, Ivan decided to employ a private detective. Within a mere week, he was presented with numerous photographs of Marina entangled in the arms of another man. Vanya pulled into his driveway. Dusk had already settled, and the yard was eerily quiet. He wasn't in the mood to head home. Frankly, he had no clue what to do with himself. From the trunk, he grabbed a bottle of whiskey, found a seat in the gazebo, and began to drink, pondering the chaos that was his life. "Mind if I join?" He jumped, startled. In front of him stood a young woman who seemed oddly familiar, Katya, the one who'd always had a thing for him. "Have a seat. Why aren't you asleep?" "Can't sleep. Then I saw you from my window, so I came down." "What's that you're drinking?" "Don't even ask." "Oh, Vanya, you shouldn't do this. You'll get smashed and do something you'll regret." "Yeah, I won't. But why do you look so down?" They lingered in the gazebo with Katya until nearly dawn. They reminisced about the past and exchanged stories on various topics. Vanya felt a lightness, as if the world around him had become purer. When he finally returned home, he softly settled onto the couch in the living room, not quite ready to face Marika or even listen to her gentle breathing. Marika hadn't ventured out for an entire week. Vanya's nightly absences had brought her a measure of clarity. She often wondered where he had been and what he had been up to. Yet Vanya always replied that he was at work, sidestepping any drama. He couldn't shake thoughts of Katya from his mind. She appeared delicate, like a little mouse, but there was an essence about her, something genuine and kind, that Marika simply lacked. A couple of weeks later, he returned home, only to find Marika missing. Sonichka, after a moment of realization, contacted her grandmother, who promptly fetched Andriushka from the garden. Vanya was as dark as a thundercloud. He had an inkling of her whereabouts, but was clueless about his next move. Their mother needed to leave urgently, so they escorted her. Just outside the door, they bumped into Katya again. Flustered, she flushed, while Vanya, almost instinctively, blurted out, "Katya, why don't you join us at the cafe right now?" Katya, initially taken aback, then met his gaze with a bold determination and replied, "Let's do it." The children bounced with delight, their joy palpable. Ivan placed nearly every item on the cafe's menu as if he were on a culinary expedition. Laughter filled the air as they enjoyed their time together. Throughout it all, his gaze remained fixed on Katya. He pondered how she interacted with Andrew, guiding him on how to savor cake without letting the crumbs scatter, and how she patiently answered Sonichka's myriad questions. Overall, Katya exuded a coziness, a sense of being perfectly at home in herself. Yet there was one significant revelation that Ivan, for reasons unbeknownst to him, had previously overlooked. Katya possessed a striking beauty. While Marika captivated with her vivid, eye-catching allure, Katya's charm was delicate and soulful. Each time she glanced in his direction, Offering a soft smile, Ivan witnessed a certain radiance in her. Did she still harbor feelings for him? Surely not. After all, she wasn't married. "Katya," he blurted out, "forgive my lack of tact, but what about your husband?" "I've never been married and don't have a husband," she replied. Ivan, feeling rather foolish, couldn't help but inquire, "Why ever not?" Katya felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her, and Sonia gave a nudge to the guy's side with her hand. "Dad, you can't go around asking a woman questions like that." Vanya realized himself that he just put his foot in it and felt the urge to say sorry. But Katya had already replied. "Why even ask? You already know." At this point, Ivan couldn't help but feel bashful himself. He hadn't anticipated such bluntness from Katya. Somehow, the evening fizzled out on its own. Once they got back home, Marinka was already busy with something or other in the kitchen. She gave Vanya a guilty look, bracing herself for a confrontation. However, he remained silent. Without a word, he walked into the room and collapsed onto the sofa, still speechless. For 3 days, Marinka was as silent as the deep sea, yet on the 4th, she started to stir. Vanya was at home that particular day, which meant her options for slipping out were slim to none. His eyes keen, he observed everything, grasping the full scope of the unfolding drama with a quiet fascination. Inside him, nothing stirred. All emotion seemed extinguished, as if extinguished flames left no trace of smoke. Viewing the photographs where Marinka and her paramour frolicked, it was a revelation, though hardly a surprise. Deep down, he had always harbored the suspicion. The gnawing thought that Sonitchka might not biologically be his seemed almost irrelevant now. Both Sonitchka and Andreyushka were his children, bonded not by blood, but by the heart, and he would cling to that till the end. Increasingly, Ivan found his thoughts drifting to Katya. What if he had noticed her back then? What might have been the weaving of their lives had he chosen differently? Likely a lively house filled with the echoes of many children. He noticed Katya's joy in nurturing the young ones, and he himself always had a soft spot for children. Sonia wandered over, plopped down beside him on the couch, and wrapped her arms around him. "Dad, Mom's really mad. She's shouting at us." Vanya chuckled to himself. He knew all too well why she was upset. She was raring to go see her lover, but something had tripped her up. "Don't pay her any mind, Sonitchka," he said soothingly. "Oh, how lovely it was when it was just you and me living together. Now it's all different, though Andrew gets an earful from her too." Vanya eyed his daughter intently. Odd, why had such an idea never crossed his mind before? Andreyushka was crying again, and Vanya could hear Marinka barking at him once more. He shuffled his way to the kitchen, scooped the little boy into his arms. He set him down and spun a yarn to calm him. Then he returned to the kitchen. Marinka hadn't noticed him yet. He paused and observed her dropping some tablets into her tea. His brow furrowed, he stepped back, and then pretended he'd just arrived. Marinka seemed quite content to see him. "Oh, Vanechka, I was just about to come get you. Here, share a cup of tea with me. I've got a killer headache. Perhaps tea will do the trick." She pushed the mug, the one she discreetly tipped the pills into, across the table toward him. Was she scheming to poison him? Surely not, she's not that extreme. But what then? Probably just sleeping tablets. As Marina busied herself with the stove, he discreetly emptied his tea into the potted plant. Apologies, plant, that's gotta sting. Catching sight of his now empty mug, Marina raised an eyebrow in surprise. "I was parched," he explained nonchalantly. "Anyway, I should get going, feeling pretty beat, and could use some shut-eye." Marina flashed him a contented smile. Vanya lay there in the darkness, ears attuned to the sounds coming from the kitchen. He could hear her phone ringing, noticed her hushed, rapid conversation, and then she stepped into the room. "Vanya, Vanya," she called softly. But he remained silent, feigning sleep. Marina slipped out, and after a minute, the front door closed softly behind her. Vanya rose, quietly approached the window. He saw Marinka getting into a taxi. Well, there it is. Now he needed to seize the moment to carry out his plans. Vanya moved with care, not wanting to rouse the kids, as he gathered Marina's belongings. Gently, he placed 2 suitcases and a bag in the hallway, placed her passport on top, and inside that passport, he tucked the photos the investigator had given him. Then he went back to bed. Strangely, he drifted off into sleep almost immediately. The doorbell roused him. Jumping up, he hurried to answer. On the threshold stood Marina, her eyes wide with fear. "Vanya, I'll clarify everything, absolutely everything. I adore you immensely. It was an error, just a blunder. Don't dial, you'll awaken the little ones. And do me a favor, keep out of my path from now on." Vanya shut the door. Marina stared at the door, her eyes filled with a hollow dread. Where should she journey now? What course should she take? She was acutely aware that Ivan's tranquility and sluggishness were but temporary. She surmised that giving him space to cool off and long for her, and then attempting to reconcile, would be the wisest course of action. She punched in her lover's digits. "Hey there, my spouse gave me the boot. I'll come over to you." "Are you out of your mind? What use do I have for you here? My missus is returning in a couple of days. Manage your own issues." The phone's short beeps echoed through the empty room. Marina was bewildered. He had sworn up and down that he adored her, that he couldn't imagine a life without her. Yet after 3 grueling months in a dingy rented room with no signs of life getting any better, Marina figured she'd had enough. It was high time to take charge of Vanya. Forgiveness and longing could only stretch so far. Marina's brother, harboring grudges since their younger days, refused to let her cross his threshold. Back then, sweet-talking Grandma into signing over the apartment, only for her to sell it quietly and squander the money had left its scars. He bluntly told her not to expect any charity from him. Consequently, borrowing money from her friends became her only option to afford a place. As for a job, it was never on her radar. Vanya had always been the breadwinner, ensuring their family wanted for nothing. Now, with the funds completely dried up, Marina knew it was time to return to the familiar comforts of their family home. Marina approached the house, and to her disappointment, Vanya's car was nowhere in sight. Well, perhaps it was for the best. It gave them the opportunity to whip up something delectable, tidy things up a bit, seeing as the place was likely covered in dust. Later in the evening, Vanya would make amends and apologize. As she attempted to unlock the door, she discovered that her key no longer fit. This was certainly a surprise. Could it be that this impudent scoundrel had the audacity to change the lock? Anger welled up inside Marina, but she reassured herself that once she got her act together, she'd deal with the lock situation swiftly. Determined, she began calling and knocking, but there was no response. Suddenly, she heard the neighbor's door creak open. "Marinka, what in the world are you doing here?" the neighbor asked curiously. "Where's Vanya, do you know?" Marina inquired. "I do. He's gone off to the seaside for a well-deserved vacation," the neighbor replied. To the seaside? Marina choked on her anger. She had imagined him fretting away here, but instead he was lounging by the ocean. "And what about the kids?" Marina pressed. "The kids are with him. Even his new wife tagged along," the neighbor revealed. The neighbor banged the door behind her, leaving no room for Marina's questions. Just one glance at the woman's contorted expression was enough to stir a whirlpool of emotions in her. She had never held any affection for this rough-and-tumble character. Her heart always went out to Vanya. Yet there was Marina, rooted to the spot, unable to move. What wife? What new wife? Has he completely lost his senses? She'd show him, if only he'd return. He'd come to deeply regret ever being born. Suddenly, a brilliant thought sparked in Marina's mind. She'd report him to the authorities for snatching her kids. They were officially divorced, and without her permission, he had no right to take them anywhere. But first, she'd have to speak to his mother. She could have her call him and say that if he didn't come back and make amends, she'd turn him in. So she made her way to Vanya's mother's house. The woman answered the door, her expression a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. "What do you want?" "I need to talk to you." "There's nothing to discuss." "Oh, but there is. I'm going to report Vanya to the police for taking the kids without telling me." "Well, do it then." "I mean it. I'll call the cops, and I'll make sure they look into this." "Go ahead and call them." "I'm right here." "Seriously, call the police." Marina clutched the telephone, sobbing into the mouthpiece that her husband had absconded with the kids and his mother was shielding him. Ivan's mother observed her with a curious gaze. She then remarked, "Well, come on in. What's the use of having the cops hang around outside, right?" Marina couldn't fathom how she could remain so composed. Nevertheless, she entered and took a seat. It wasn't long before the police showed up. Marina burst out in tears almost immediately. However, she had to give herself a sharp pinch to keep the tears flowing. Her entire statement was recorded, after which they questioned Ivan's mother. "Why are you aiding and concealing the children?" "Concealing them from whom?" "From her. There's no concealment here. Vanya, my boy, has simply taken his wife and kids on a vacation. And this woman, his former wife, she lost her parental rights a fortnight ago." The lady retrieved her papers and handed them over to the officers. They meticulously scrutinized every detail before locking their gaze upon Marina, who observed the proceedings with an eerie intensity. "Why on earth are you carrying on like this, ma'am?" one officer reproached. "You left your own kids behind, and now you're causing a commotion." I've been unfortunate," Marina faltered, her voice barely audible. "Well, let me enlighten you, lady. We sent you numerous letters, ever since you were evicted from your place, to the address you previously resided in. You never bothered to respond. We've got statements from neighbors and even private investigators, all testifying to the same. I'm not letting this slide. They orchestrated this entire ordeal. They'll soon be weeping and pleading for leniency. What on earth am I supposed to survive on now?" Vanya's mother gazed at her and remarked, "You brought this upon yourself, you jerk. People actually toil to make a living. Do you not grasp that? Is that what you were missing? Vanya does everything for you." The authorities escorted her out of the apartment, issuing a warning that next time, they wouldn't hesitate to take her down to the station. Marina jerked her hand free and strode off, deep in thought. She realized she needed a strategy to win Ivan back. As she made her way, she paused at a pawn shop, cashing in the earrings Vanya had once gifted her. That should cover a room and some grub. It'll be all right. She can be patient. Marinka frequented Vanya's residence each day. After 3 hours of waiting in the yard, she finally caught sight of his vehicle entering the premises. In an attempt to appear presentable, Marina hastily adjusted her hair and rose to greet him. As Vanya emerged from the car, he kindly assisted Katerina in stepping out. Marinka faintly recalled encountering this young lady before. Ah yes, she resided in this very neighborhood. How she has transformed. Marinka struggled to recognize her, as she now radiated a newfound beauty. Shortly afterwards, the children emerged from the house. Young Sonia quickly became aware of Marinka's presence. Smiling warmly, Marinka beckoned the girl forward, causing her to seek shelter behind her father. However, she soon tugged at his sleeve, eager to share something. Vanya spun on his heel, his gaze narrowing with evident irritation. He strode towards Marina, seized her by the wrist, and swiftly pulled her behind a shrub to shield her from Andrei's view. Katya caught the fierce expression in Vanya's eyes and instructed Sonia to quickly escort her brother back home. Then she hurried to follow her husband. Vanya was livid. It was a rare sight to see him this enraged, but today was an exception. "I told you not to show your face." "I came for the kids." "You've never cared about those kids, and now, with your tail tucked, you suddenly remember them." He clasped her hand with increasing force until it almost hurt. Suddenly, Katya rushed over. "Vinechka, forget it. Let's leave," she urged. And in that moment, Marinka's emotions overwhelmed her. She forcefully yanked her hand out of Vanya's grasp and lunged at Katya, desperately pulling at her hair and scratching her. Vanya struggled to separate Marinka from his wife, finally tossing her aside. The children then rushed over to the chaotic scene, embracing Katya and all yelling, "Are you okay? Did you get hurt? Let me take care of this." Katya tried to calm them down, settling on the ground. "Darlings, it's all right. It's just a minor scratch." A trickle of blood ran down Katya's cheek. Marinka observed the scene with pure hatred, uttered, "Sonechka, Andreyusha, come to me. I'm your mother. I've missed you." But the kids stayed put, barely even glancing her way. Raising her voice, she exclaimed, "I said to quickly step away from that lady and come to Mommy. Are you listening?" Sonia pivoted to face her and shot back, "Leave us alone. Don't you dare touch our Katya. Just go." "What are you saying to your mother, you little brat? Have you not had enough punishment from me?" she retorted angrily. "Andrew, go to your mother. He's not even your father." That was when Vanya could no longer hold his tongue. He turned to her and declared, "You've got 2 minutes. If you're not out of here in 2 minutes, I assure you, you'll be in for some serious trouble." Marina flinched under his intense gaze, but then took a step closer and spat, "You'll regret this." In the evening, the entire clan gathered in the kitchen. Even Grandma made an appearance, as it had been ages since they last spent time together. The grandkids bombarded her with seashells from their seaside excursions and knickknacks purchased from street peddlers. They avoided discussing the day's events and instead regaled Grandma with tales of the captivating ocean, its majestic waves, and the brilliant sunshine. She listened intently, beaming with joy. As darkness settled outside, it signaled the time to make their way home. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from the street, accompanied by a burst of light. Everyone darted towards the window in alarm. Ivan's car was ablaze. Those fortunate enough to have cars quickly scrambled to move them to safety. Unfortunately, the nearby vehicles weren't as lucky and also succumbed to the spreading flames. Katya's voice rang out in distress. "Why are you just standing there?" "What can I do?" "There's nothing to salvage," she replied, defeated. "Do you think it's her fault?" Someone pondered aloud. "I believe so. Thankfully, I have insurance to soften the blow. But our neighbors—" Another voice trailed off in worry. It dawned on them all that they had installed a security camera at the entrance just a month ago, aimed precisely at the parked cars. Marinka was in a festive mood. She had spent her last dime on a bottle of bubbly. Popping it open, she sunk into the couch and took a swig right from the bottle's mouth, a grin spreading across her face. It was only the start. She'd figure out the next step soon. Then the doorbell chimed. Curious, she wondered who it could be at this hour. Swinging the door open, she was met with two officers. "What do you need?" she queried. "Pack up, we're here to take you in," they replied in unison. "For me? Why? What's the issue?" "Just so you know, arson is a crime," one officer articulated. "I haven't torched anything." "It ignited on its own," she protested, confusion knitting her brows. Marinka hesitated. No, it couldn't be. She couldn't face incarceration. What had she done to deserve this? She had been missiled, ousted from her own home. Yet her cries of injustice fell on deaf ears. When she attempted to shove one officer away and accidentally scratched another's face with her nails, they swiftly handcuffed her and informed her that her potential sentence would now be harsher. A year on, Katya and Ivan welcomed a little girl into their world. Sonia scrutinized the newborn carefully when she was first brought home from the hospital. Then she turned to Andreyushka with a serious tone. "You're not the youngest anymore, which means you can't just think about yourself. See, she's the little one now, and it's up to you to look after her and to be her playmate." After pondering for a moment, Andrew felt the pull of mischief, but recognized the importance of his new role. "All right, I'll look after her," he declared. Laughter filled the room as everyone delighted in his earnest proclamation.